Good morning, gamers. Welcome to coverage of the Standard Regional Championship here at Portland, Oregon. I'm Ryan Overturf. She is Carmen Clem, you just have to say. I am coming here from my ice this morning in the streets of my hometown. I just had to express my solidarity. My heart is with everybody back home that has been working so hard to keep each other safe through this federal occupation. Hopefully this comes to an end soon. It could not end soon enough. My heart is with you all back home, my friends, family, neighbors, and loved ones. But the show must go on here at Portland. We have myself and Carmen here. We have a great crew here bringing you a championship. There you see me in the top left, my handsome beardless mug, kind of an old picture. I'm Ryan Overturf. She's Carmen Clem-Parens. We have Ailey Loney and Corey Baumeister here this weekend, bringing you all the standard action. And the format standard, if you're not familiar, this regional championship is a big deal, and this is a constructed format, which means minimum 60-card deck, up to 15 cards in the sideboard, 50-minute rounds, best of 3 games, so win 2 games, you win a match. And this is a rotating format. There's a lot of sets that are legal in standard here.
Yeah, and notably, this is the first major tournament that we are going to see alongside Lorwyn Eclipsed. Pre-release for that just last weekend, already making massive waves in standard. And right now, standard goes all the way back to Wilds of Eldraine. So one of the great things that this does is allow for players to build really so many different kinds of decks. Standard at the moment has basically every macro archetype represented, from aggro to control to mid-range to combo. I'm really excited to see what players have cooked up going into this weekend.
And we saw a ton of impact from Avatar: The Last Airbender debuting late last year. And Lorwyn Eclipse, this is the first event that this is going to be legal for. We're building up to a Pro Tour next weekend. We're going to see some innovations this weekend for sure.
Right, this is the spot where there are so many sick cards that ask you to build around them within Lorwyn Eclipse, right? It has this sort of Tipple theme where a lot of cards say, hey, this goblin card, for example, is goblins, most of which are going to come from the goblin set. Therefore, you end up with these sort of packages that feel a little bit insular, but they hook into so many different sets in standard.
Yeah, it's been a cool thing to see, and we're going to watch that this weekend. You have some plants. This is what you all do at R&D. You're very clever. You plant some seeds for these type of things, and a bunch of big payoffs come all at once. But let's talk about our schedule this weekend. We're playing 9 rounds of standard today, and we're trying to advance to day 2. There's going to be a cutoff. You're trying to earn 18 or more match points, which is a 6-3 record or better to advance to day number 2. Day 2 will be back again at 9 a.m. Western time. 6 rounds of Swiss tomorrow before it cuts to the top 8 players will advance to a single elimination playoff where we are trying to crown a regional champion.
Right, and they're playing for a ton of amazing stuff this weekend. Thousands of dollars on the line, and really, this is, you look up top, that winner, that finalist spot, you're seeing World Championship invitations going out. The amount of validation that comes from something like that is unmatched.
Yeah, World Championship invites for the finals, tons of Pro Tour invites going all the way down through top 32, $20,000 for first place. Pretty cool trophy as well. I love a trophy. I don't know about you.
Right, that's something where it's the type of thing where being able to sort of hold success in your hand is unmatched, right? Just actually having a physical manifestation of not only the memories, but in a lot of the tournament itself, but you think about the preparation, what made you make the choices that you made going into that event. I know personally it's something that I look back on the things that I've been able to take home over the years, and every single time, it's even the play testing that sticks out to me.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where once you win a trophy, they have special furniture, special accessories for your home to display these things. It's dramatic to say that it changes your life, you know, but it's really special.
Yeah, and speaking of special, we got Pro Tour invites going all the way down to the 32nd place. This is basically the most Pro Tour invites that go out in any event like this.
Oh yeah, and we have almost 900 players this weekend, so top 32, the competition is going to be stiff. You got to fight through a lot of players who did earn their way here. You did have to qualify for the regional championship. That's another aspect of the prize pool here. You do earn qualifications for future regional championships, which is more shots at the Pro Tour, more shots at those World Championship invites from these events. Very prestigious stuff.
Right, just looking at the prize board here, not too bad to take home 20,000 big ones on top of everything else that's amazing about winning an event like this.
I've had weekends when I've been really jazzed. I'm looking at the $250 cash prize, you know, cover most of your hotel.
The number of times either of us have been there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The words bread and butter come to mind.
Ooh, listen, I love a cheeky little carb.
So we are still kind of getting players situated. Excuse me. We were talking to Nick Miller a little bit. You know, we got the tournament starting, but people are turning in deck lists. This is an open deck list tournament. We got to figure out what our players are, who we're going to watch. I know that Nick Miller is on the hunt for great players and/or exciting new deck lists. He was talking about maybe getting some elementals on camera. I think a lot of the breakout cards from Lorwyn are going to be in that elemental category. You have that kind of marquee cycle of mythic rares. What's the verbiage for that? Like Vibrance at all, the Gruul one, some kind of,
I think we can just say evoke elementals.
Evoke?
One of the nice things about this set in particular is elementals lean into some different mechanical space below rare, which means that at higher rarity, those mythic rares, the deceits and wistfulnesses of the world, catharsis, like you mentioned. I believe, please correct me in the comments, get in there if I'm wrong, those are the only evoke elementals in the main set for Lorwyn Eclipse. So those 5 elementals, similar to the Modern Horizons 2 ones, can play very differently when you evoke them and not, just because of the amount that you get on top of just the text box, whatever you're hard. Casting them is doubled with those hybrid designs where you can kind of get either half of them. It harkens back to the old Shadowmoor and Eventide designs that had a, hey, if you paid red, you get this. If you paid black, you get this, which gives you you can play this in red or black, but it's supercharged if you're doing both.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of the cycle from Dissension. There was some uncommons. Crypt Champion, any Project X old heads in the chat today, where you got an ability always, but the creature stuck around if you paid the mana, which is similar, but a little bit different with the cycle. I love the design. You made the comparison to the Modern Horizons 2 elementals, but the fact that you have to pay mana to get the effect, so you can't fully cheat, but there's some ways to finesse it. Some superior Spider-Mans, perhaps.
And not just that. Look at this. So it looks like round 1 we're going to be covering Joe Puglisi on Sultai Elementals, which is sort of doing the Evoke-esque synergy combo thing that we've seen in Modern historically, but in Standard. So this is a deck that's using Not Dead After All, as well as Undying Malice, when paired with the Evoke ability to say, okay, here's my cool, say, hand disruption spell from Deceit, and then for 1 mana I'm going to get a 5/5.
Yeah,
not a
good
bad
return.
deal. Not bad.
Also setting up to discount a potential future Sunderflock. This is a deck that I believe got 2nd place in a challenge this week on Magic Online. On the other side of the table, we have Raphael Marin. Probably Marin. Anyway, this is It Lessons on the other side of the table. This has been the deck that dominated and Seth Manfield won the World Championship with. It was out in force at Magic Spotlight the Avatar 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. Didn't take home the trophy there. We saw Oliver Tomiko top 8 with the Archetype. I was walking the floor of the LCQs yesterday. I'm not a stats guy. I didn't count the amount of lessons in the field. It was a lot. I expect to see a lot of this deck this weekend.
I'm hearing there are dozens of them.
Dozens, at least. At least dozens.
But, you know, we are joking about it. Something you're alluding to is that this deck, it was very successful at the World Championship just a couple of months ago. A lot of very strong players are finding success with the archetype. So kicking off the first round of this event with the newcomer versus sort of the stock thing to beat. This is the litmus test that these decks are going to have to face in order to be successful on the weekend. Yeah, definitely. And kind of the Lessons deck, it's got this really strong engine, right? So if you're not familiar with the deck, it's kind of built around 2 cards. It's the Lesson package, of course, but really the 2 cards that come to mind aren't Lessons at all. They're the cards that pay you off for playing so many Lessons. It's Artist Talent, to let you rummage as you cast all your Lessons, and Monument to Endurance, that'll pay you off as you cycle through the cards in your deck. You're rummaging and you're discarding for any kind of value there. This is a robust, powerful engine that will close the game in a short number of turns, but it takes some time to get online, and where we've kind of seen decks be positionally advantaged. The winningest deck, not the winner, Bant Airbending won Magic Spotlight, the Avatar, but the winningest deck in aggregate was Green Landfall, a deck that you were a fan of going into that event. Listen.
And the vulnerability of Lessons deck is it does take that time to set up. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Does the Elemental deck have the juice? Can it get online fast enough or have some combination of disruption to put the lesson plan off long enough to close the game? There's a lot going on for the Elementals decks that I think you really could like in this sort of matchup. So Deceit in particular is something that's going to give you a lot of additional disruption to go after specific pieces. You mentioned there are these build-around artifacts and enchantments that the Lessons deck is trying to assemble and turn the corner with very quickly. In a lot of ways, it can feel like a combo conversion
control deck where it's not exactly going infinite, but it gets you from 18 to dead really fast for a deck with like 4 creatures, you know?
Yeah, again, I'm not a stats or a math guy, but 18, much smaller than infinite.
Right, exactly. And on the other side of the table, you have this Deceit, which is able to kind of knock out whatever piece that the Lessons deck is only going to have one of. Say there's only one Monument to Endurance. All of a sudden, there's no way to convert cards to damage, for example. There's also Wistfulness. So this is the blue-green elemental, which is one that is actually going to give a lot of main deck artifact and enchantment removal, on top of a pretty good body and something that can just draw you a couple of cards and filter your draw early, even if the Izzet Lessons side of the table doesn't have those build-around permanents on the table just yet.
Yeah, makes sense. And the Lessons deck, it's gotten at least one new tool, kind of a hype card that's in Lorwyn. Once again, talking about cards from Dissension. We got a couple spell snares here, and this is kind of fascinating. I think this is actually an element that this Elementals deck that Joseph Puglisi is taking advantage of. I'm looking at a lot of effects that cost 2 mana and not a single 2-mana spell.
Yep.
That's remarkable.
Right, it's the spot where I know so frequently you'll end up in spots where your opponent goes, all right, shock a Steam Vents on turn 1 with a spell snare in hand. Oh no, so unlucky, nothing to do, because you want to play around, say, your opponent having a Badger Mole Cub, if they've mostly just shown you a green land so far, and then your opponent just evokes a Deceit. And you're
and leaves you with the spell snare in hand.
Right, exactly.
Because that's not doing anything.
Right, and you're just kind of down 2 life, and it is, quote-unquote, just 2 life, but we know morally who got the victory here.
I generally don't have to pay 2 life to mulligan.
Well, weird flex, but okay.
Maybe that's just me. I'm built different, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know if you have maybe a house rule with your friends or something that's just like they've gotten away with it for a long time, but if they're making you pay 2 life to mulligan,
right,
you should get that looked at.
I mean, I think we all have this story where when we first learned Magic, a friend taught us. You know, these days, actually, Magic Arena, I have to say, has gone to tremendous lengths to make the new player experience so much easier. I was told some stuff that's not true when I learned Magic.
I will tap Land or Elves and put a forest from my deck box into play.
Dark Ritual, here's my 3 swamps. All right. Well, it sounds like our players are ready. They know how to play Magic. They're here at the Regional Championship. Let's get down to the action. Welcome here to round 1 of the Regional Championship here in Portland, Oregon. At the top of your screen, you have Joseph Puglisi on Sultai Elementals. On the bottom, Raphael Marin on Izzet Lessons. Marin on the play, going to open up with Shocking for Steam Vents, and there's Gran.
I mean, this is the opening that Lessons wants every single time.
Yep, and this is the opening that all the opponents want every single time. You see Shocking in Multiversal Swamp. It's going to take care of that Gran with a Tragic Trajectory.
That's canon.
That is canon. Artist talented here in turn number 2 for Marin, so starting to get the engine online despite the tragic fate of Gran.
And this is one of the spots where Multiversal Passage is great at producing 1 color of mana, but all of a sudden all of these hybrid elementals are asking for 2 of the same color, which can be awkward. Luckily, Deceit, pretty nice to evoke for black mana.
Yeah, Cavern of Souls on Elemental. Here's Deceit. We're going to take a look at Marin's hand. We have Double Monument, Accumulated Wisdom, and Basic Mountain. And this is my first look. I'm going to quickly learn these alternate frame elementals, it seems, this weekend. Good call on the Deceit there.
And you can see the tank because this is the spot where most of the time with a sort of Thoughtseize effect, quote unquote, you're going to want to go after whatever there's only one of in the hand because that just reduces the range of ways that your opponent can play the game. But Monument to Endurance is so strong that Puglisi had to sort of triple check.
Right. You see, Accumulated Wisdom was the take as we go back to Marin's. Going to play one of those monuments, rummages away the draw for turn, Basic Island goes away, and we head back to Puglisi. So now the engine is getting online here from Marin. There's already kind of pressure for Puglisi to do something special here.
And, you know, one of the upsides of Multiversal Passage on black is it is one of the best colors at basically just evoke or casting any of those not dead after all effects.
Shock for Overgrown Tomb. Here's another Deceit. Got to imagine there's something going on with that Overgrown Tomb. We take a look at that second monument and another copy of Accumulated Wisdom picked up for Marin.
And now Puglisi has a lot more optionality in what to do in a lot of ways where there's only one of each thing either way. You're kind of accepting that the other monument is on the table. So what is the kind of game that you win from here? And it's the one, it looks like he's decided with less selection by going after Accumulate Wisdom.
Wisdom bites the dust, but unlike Grand, Deceit is not dead after all.
I love how it just feels like a monologue.
Great card name. We head back to Marin, now untapping with Artist Talent and Monument to Endurance, facing down a 6/6 Deceit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and this is a lot of the special sauce that decks have found success with against these lesson strategies is Disruption backed up with a clock.
All right, there's that second monument that we've known about since turn 2 here. Loots away a third monument. Gonna get a couple triggers here. Excuse me, just one monument already on the battlefield. It's going to draw an extra card. There's land number 4. It's a Verge as we head back to Puglisi. And you were talking about this 18 number kind of from the other side of the matchup, but this Deceit just has 3 turns of work to do here. So we go over to Puglisi. He's going to play another Cavern of Souls. Surely, oh, is there a reason to name non-elemental? We'll get confirmation on that. But there's a lot of elementals to the deck. I'm assuming elemental is the name.
I would guess so. I can imagine the world where you want to end up naming something like Superior Spider-Man or Quantum Riddler. Quantum Riddler in particular can be a little bit hard to cast, or Sphinx for Quantum Riddler, rather. But otherwise, elemental is probably going to get the job done.
Deceit connects for 6, Marin to 12, and here is the debut of Sunderflock. We'll get that one on the screen. This one, when you want to pay full retail, it costs 9. Just happens to cost 6 less right now. There it is, the 9-mana 5/5 elemental. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest mana value among elementals you control. It flies, and when it enters, if you cast it, return all non-elemental creatures to their owner's hand. That's not really coming into play here, but the 5/5's not nothing.
Right, this is a card that a lot of people are playing because it's one of the best answers to the green Simic or Aboroid decks that we've been seeing over the last few weeks, because it also checks the lands that are earthbent by Badger Mole Cub in a really brutal way.
5/5 is somewhat notable as Marin's at 12. That's 2 6s. A little bit more than a 6 and a 5. As we see what Marin can do about it. Now with 2 monuments and an Artist Talent, this is where things can get really scary. It's not enough stuff to end the game, even triggering all the monuments all the way on both players' turn. That's still only 12 points of damage this turn. But I'm looking at the deck list. Okay, there's 1 Burst Lightning.
Well, so one of the things about actually Puglisi is kind of threatening lethal next turn. And let me talk to you about why. Not Dead After All isn't just giving us a cool little thing to say about why this Deceit is still on the table. It also puts a Wicked role as the thing that is giving a +1/+1 to Deceit. So whenever that enchantment goes away, Marin's going to lose 1 more life. So if Puglisi has any way to say, get an enchantment off the table or make the Deceit go away, then Marin is going to take that 1 extra point needed to just die.
So I think you're telling me that we might see a lethal Wistfulness coming down the pipeline?
Ooh, could be.
Or does that exile? How does that interaction work? I don't know. We'll find out. We have Accumulated Wisdom going on here.
Oh,
for
you're
Marin.
right. You're right. The aura does have to go to a graveyard.
Gonna do some rummaging. There goes Combustion Technique, and that's in response to Accumulate Wisdom. This is not the discard, this is the cast. Looks like that's going after Sunderflock. And that would be the 3rd lesson, so that's why you see the holding priority and the response to the Accumulated Wisdom. Some rummaging happening. Firebending Lesson, that's no good. We'll discard that one.
Oh, it's quite good where it is now.
Yeah, it likes to be in the graveyard. Here's some treasures for the monuments.
Realized Firebending Lesson was a goth.
Was a what?
A goth. Likes to be in the graveyard.
Well played. All right, and here goes Accumulated Wisdom. So you did see the Exile on the Sunderflock. You see the draw 3 on the Accumulated Wisdom. You see 2 treasures in tow for Marin. There's Agnikella as the land for turn.
Which is somehow, it feels like Marin has not even really spent mana with all these extra treasures here.
Main deck, Soul Guide Lantern. That's going to rummage away Iroh's Demonstration. You're going to see some monuments go off once again. We're at the, looks like lose 3 life stage of the turn. Notably, there's no discounting effect in play for Marin at this point in time. That Artist Talent's on level 0. So those treasures are extra mana, but it's a little bit limited on his output at this stage of the game. As we head back to Puglisi, he's got that 2-turn clock here with Deceit, but I don't know if he has 2 turns. I think he needs more here.
Yeah, 2 turns is a pretty tall order at this point. Uh-oh.
And Combustion Technique's going to make it so there's no clock and there's no game left to be played. Rafael Marin going to take game number 1 here.
This is the strength of the Is It Lessons deck that Marin's brought this weekend, is sometimes you can see discard spells just go after your best cards, but because you see so much of your library by just churning through it, you can replace the missing pieces.
Yes. Yeah, we saw the strength there, and really the Elementals deck looked like it did its thing. We saw Deceit. We saw Deceit with Not Dead After All. We saw Thunderflock. So it looks like Puglisi needs help. And as we go to the sideboard, where does he have his options for him here?
So the big things that I think Puglisi is going to be doing is cutting a bunch of the things that are good against the creature decks of the world. We see a bunch of things in the space of, say, Emptiness or even Thunderflock, for example, that are not going to be at their best here. Requiting Hex also not really what you want your deck to be about a lot of the time. There's a bunch of stuff attacking hands and non-creature spells off to the side that looks fantastic. We see Deep Cavern Bat, Duress, Spider Sense, all cards that I'd be happy to be reaching for in Puglisi's seat. And Soul Guide Lantern, we saw it in the main deck on Marin's side, but I believe that is a response to the expectation that he would be playing against Lessons. So I expect Puglisi will also be bringing in Soul Guide Lantern in the matchup.
Well, makes sense, and so Marin's got some options here as well. A lot of this stuff seems to be sort of positional sideboard things here. Quantum Riddler, Ral Crackling Wit. It's more deciding, are you the control or are you the beatdown? It's weird to call the Monument deck a beatdown deck.
Yeah, right.
But it looks like generally all of this is to take a specific kind of controlling slants in any given matchup for Marin.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I somewhat suspect Marin might actually just want to stay linear. Whatever you think your hand is going to get attacked a bunch, the best way to react to that, just like we saw last game, was have a bunch of ways to churn through your library and find whatever piece the hand disruption took. So I don't think very much is going to be changing here, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are some cards in the main deck for Marin that aren't really pulling their weight anymore. I know we joked about it a little bit, but Firebending Lesson is not really where you want to be against a deck that is playing mid to large creatures most of the game, so seeing those hit the showers for something like Quantum Riddler or Ral Crackling Wit that's going to make you a bit better in a grindy game makes sense. Soul Guide Lantern is also a really low opportunity cost way to attack any of those quote-unquote scammy sorts of not dead after all turns that give Puglisi a ton of early pressure. So I can imagine that one coming into play here.
I've also been a fan of Soul Guide Lantern specifically as just something you can boomerang basics when you need to draw a card.
Oh, yeah.
But there's no copies of, we should talk about deck lists, I guess. We have no copies of Storm Chaser's talent. This is something that we've seen in some Lessons players' builds these days, so Marin not playing any of those these days. And actually, no boomerang basics. So that does change the texture of that a little bit. So I redact that comment, but something to think about if you are playing the boomerang basics.
Yeah, definitely. It really speaks to Marin also, I think, wanting to play a more linear game and just say, no, I actually just think this sort of Rube Goldberg machine of various rummaging and threeing you over and over is going to be good enough every single game. And, you know, at least so far, I'd say he's batting 100.
Well, whatever your plan is with the Lessons deck, you can get your hands on whatever Lessons spread you want to employ by getting your hands on some Avatar The Last Airbender cards. You can order that product at StarCityGames.com. So many sweet cards from this set. You can check that out at StarCityGames.com/MTG-TLA. There you see Redirect Lightning. That one, I'm always happy to see it, but we don't really see it in Standard.
I know, that card's so cool. That was one of the ones. So I was actually, so I work for Wizards of the Coast, for anyone who hasn't tuned into the broadcast before, and I was on the vision design team for Avatar The Last Airbender. Ton of fun, worked a lot on the mechanics in the set in particular, but Redirect Lightning was one of the things that was just written on the whiteboard day one. Okay, we have to have a card about this. Let's figure out the text box.
Incredible. Really cool story moment, too, just so you get into the way that the various bendings work in Avatar.
Yes.
You have just like the level 1, you control fire, you control water, earth, air, but then kind of the second order kind of bendings where fire bendings can Firebenders can kind of master lightning. Really cool stuff to get into there.
Yeah, I particularly love the sort of worldliness of it, where you have Iroh saying, yes, you can be an incredible firebender, but I have actually learned an advanced technique by studying the ways of waterbenders and applying that to my firebending, and I think that that sort of thing is just a great lesson. Pun intended. I will own that.
Well played.
But I appreciate your charity.
I do have to hand it to you.
In fact.
So our players are drawing up 7-card hands for game number 2 here. Raphael Marin up a game on the Izzet Lessons Menace. I shouldn't call it a menace. I love Izzet. I'm rooting for it always. I don't care how dominant it is.
Yeah, like nothing in the deck even has menace, so like.
It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, right. Nice try, though.
You don't have to hand it to me. Puglisi is going to be looking for a 6-card hand here. You see Marin there with a couple Grand Grands. You got a backup Grand Grand in case the first one bites the dust this game. And also Grand Grand, if you can cast it on turn 1, you don't really need that much of an additional texture to make a hand keepable.
Yeah, and I think I saw a decent number of lands in Marin's opening hand, which I think is one of those sort of debatable points whenever you're playing against a Thoughtseize deck, or not necessarily a Thoughtseize deck, but one that you think will be going up on hand disruption. A lot of times you just want to keep 7 cards as long as you can hit your land drops, because you can sort of top deck out of it more better that way.
Yeah, I've long been a fan. I often jokingly will just say keep every hand, just in any context. You get fewer when you mulligan. But specifically when your opponent's going to interact with your hand, what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. Once you mulligan, their Thoughtseize gets a lot stronger. Right.
All of a sudden you can end up in spots where, say, you only have 1 or 2 lands, and then you plan to cast a bunch of spells in a turn. Every time you miss a land drop is actually just converting to you not being able to make use of the velocity that your deck offers.
Right, we're underway here for game number 2. Apologies, we're going to get the overlay fixed here, but Puglisi is going to shock to 18 for turn 1 Soul Guide Lantern. Is going to be met by Grand Grand.
That's just canon.
See if Puglisi has an answer. You see Starting Town, kind of actually a good representation of 5-color lands in this Elementals deck. Cavern of Souls, 4 Starting Towns, 4 Multiversal Passage. So easy to get the double-colored mana for things like this turn 2 Deceit, which will go to 17 off the Starting Town 4. Take a look at the hand. For Marin, you see the backup Grand Grand, 3 lands, Iroh's Emissation, and Artist's Talent.
And here, it's hard to imagine a world where Puglisi doesn't have eyes on the Artist Talent. You don't want to go after the 2nd copy of a Legend in hand, and Iroh's Demonstration doesn't look like it's doing a ton at this point.
Yeah, as you said there, not really much pause there. Writes the hand down, -1 Artist's Talent as we head to Marin's turn. Here comes Grand Grand. Draw a card, discard a card.
Are you the type that writes down the card that you're going to take with Thoughtseize and then crosses it off, or do you just not write down the card?
I take tremendous joy in crossing off the card after I write it down. You don't got that one anymore. And Grand Grand's going to loot away Steam Vents. We see land number 2 for Marin, and we see what Puglisi can do to get set up. See Cavern of Souls, surely an Elemental. I've decided it's always Elemental at this point. Unless it's Spider for this one superior Spider-Man. Here comes Deceit. Take a look at that hand again. It's changed a little bit. Ilquentia picked up.
It's the quenchiest. Drink cactus juice.
I'm glad that you always have all of it, because I almost just said drink coconuts, and I would have looked like a fool.
It's just, listen, it's fine. It's fine. You can worship the giant mushroom and drink from a coconut.
Ilquentia gone, which opens the door for Not Dead After All. Deceit's going to come back. No mana was spent, so no additional card is taken as we head back to Marin.
And here's that pressure that we saw game 1 from Puglisi, and this time Marin doesn't really have any sort of an engine built up yet and is struggling.
Here comes Grand Grand connecting once again. I do apologize, having some technical issues with our overlay. I want to say this is bumping Puglisi to 16?
Yes, 16.
Actually, is it 15 off of the Starting Town last turn? I'm hearing 2014 are the life totals.
Good year.
Well, it was a year.
Yeah.
A shock is going to be the first blood for Marin down to 18. Steam Vents entering. My favorite card from Lorwyn Eclipsed.
From is tough.
In. Speaking of in, here comes Deceit. Marin to 12. There's a tap of 3. We'll find out what the starting town is doing. Just colorless mana. So here's Formidable Speaker. And Marin's 3 steps ahead of that one.
I believe that was starting town for green.
Oh, yes, you're right. That is a point because Formidable Speaker, not elemental.
Yeah, so 13, 12, Puglisi.
There are 4 copies of Formidable Speaker in the deck list here for Puglisi. Jean-Emmanuel Depraz World Championship card.
Really nice card.
Oh, yeah. Grand clocking in again. You'd think she'd be at retirement age by now, but still working every day.
Working 9 to 5.
Working 13 to 12.
Ooh, 12 all actually, but.
Double removal spell here, Combustion Technique and Iroh's Demonstration. That's going to answer Deceit and destroy our overlay. Really powerful removal spells there. All right, we're back. Still working on getting that graphic updated, but we have life totals 12 all. And there's been no 4th land here for Puglisi just yet. There's some stuff the deck can do on turn 2 and 3, but once you've already done the Not Dead After All, there's not that many cards left over in hand.
Right, this is one of those spots that can be pretty tough if you're missing land drops. The nice thing about these sort of decks is that you can actually just start hard casting your big creatures, even if you don't have anything like Not Dead After All. But you do have to hit land drops to get there, and every turn that you miss just feels so brutal because you're already pretty far away from that break point.
Here's one of my favorite game actions. Draw 1 card, sacrificing the Soul Guide Lantern, and tapped starting town. Just not really anything productive doing for Puglisi as Grand continues to be tremendously productive. Looting away an island here. Nothing but respect for my Grand.
That's how I was raised.
Here's Agnakella, Soul Guide Lantern for Marin here. Gonna get something out of the graveyard, get rid of Formidable Speaker. And on Marin's side, draw 1 card looking a bit more attractive, but even just having the Lantern online is going to prevent a lot of the shenanigans that Puglisi could get up to.
Okay, but Puglisi did just have the 5th land, which is not a bad sign because Puglisi's just not under any real pressure just yet.
Well, doesn't have a ton of life points, but it takes a while for Grand to close. As here's Quantum Riddler. That's going to be warped for 2 cards. Draw 2 cards.
Draw a card. Draw a card.
Draw a card twice. And there is Monument to Endurance. Grand offering the Grand discount. Marin going to shock in Multiversal Passage down to 10 on this side as Grand is going to go to work. Oh my god, drawing 2 discard 1?
Oh my gosh.
Advantage looking pretty firmly in Marin's side as life totals are now 9 to 10 in Marin's favor.
Oof.
And here is 1 mana Artist Talent.
And this is really starting to look like the point of no return for Marin. Having so many interlocking engine pieces at once, it's really hard for Puglisi to check more than one of these a turn.
For Puglisi now down a game with his back against it. Has to figure something out. Here's land number 6. It's Cavern of Souls, of course, on Elemental. Here's a tap of 6. There's Deceit. Double black and double blue filtered in here. Going to try to bounce Monument to Endurance. There's a response. It's Burst Lightning going upstairs. That's going to trigger.
Nope. This is just bouncing the Monument to Endurance with Deceit, and I believe
that's the hand.
Revealing the hand.
You are so right. Excuse me. All right, we're playing a game.
We're getting there. We're just give it a second. Just give it a second.
Excuse me. I got excited. I love Burst Lightning. I'm reining it in.
I mean, you're right.
Okay, I also love 1 mana accumulated wisdom.
You know, the thing about Ancestral Recall is normally you draw the cards. These ones you put them all in your hand, which can debatably be better.
It's a different way to draw 1 card 3 times.
You know, I cannot stress enough, you do not draw 1 card.
That's why it's different.
Okay.
So now Gran gonna rumble right into Deceit. Loot away a land. You wonder, is this a sign of strength or weakness for the leftovers? There was nothing there when the Deceit stripped the hand.
Right, it's really tough where this is the spot where I think Puglisi knows about this Burst Lightning and just knows, okay, well, that card is going to be worth something. I think I would rather it be worth one of my elementals and pare down the board to keep us in more of a top deck war state than let my life get lower and lower and have that Burst Lightning actually read, if target player is at 4 or less life, you win the game.
It makes sense, as you do see the kicked Burst Lightning take care of Deceit over deploying rather, the Quantum Riddler. Right, the graphic is back. These life totals are wrong. We'll work on getting that updated right now. But the battlefield now pretty well stabilized. Advantage to the player with Artist Talent, as Puglisi just paid a land and tap. Not to mention this Quantum Riddler coming back in off the warp.
And this is the strength of Quantum Riddler, is how low its opportunity cost is relative to how huge an impact the card can have.
Just another land there for Puglisi, and now we see Abandon Attachments triggering the Artist Talent, doing some more rummaging, sculpting Marin's hand as we head back his way. Fully in control of this game. Here's another Gran. And Quantum Riddler rumbles in.
Ooh. I believe that's Puglisi to 6.
That's what it looks like to me. All right, life totals, I believe, now correct on the display. Puglisi 6 to Marin 7, but Marin firmly in the driver's seat. We were talking about this kind of being what this deck is composed to do in sideboarding, take whatever controlling role is necessary, and gets the job done here in round 1 at the regional championship here in Portland. Rafael Marin, 1-0, so far so good.
Yeah, that was not bad. There's an extent to which I think it is somewhat easy to point to that game and say, hey, it looks like Puglisi flooded a little bit going into the end point of that game. But in a lot of ways, that's just the strength of this Is It Lessons deck, is in its consistency. There's a ton of card flow, and if you give the deck time to actually utilize it, it is so good at playing the same game every single game, which in a tournament like this one, where you need to be able to play 15 rounds of Magic, that this is where you are going to see these players actually get their edges, is the fact that there's such a smaller number of games where they're just going to flood out.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense when you look at this Elementals deck, too. You talk about the consistency and lessons. This deck is trying to do something powerful early, and you saw the mulligan there from Puglisi, and there was some fireworks early, but then the deck's just drawing 1 card every turn. So is it the deck still looking strong? But we have some more Magic here to cover. I don't have our players or our archetypes. Hopefully we'll get deck lists soon.
I see them on the way.
Yeah, here they are. We'll find some. We got Nicole Tipple here playing Bant Airbending. This is the archetype that won Magic Spotlight, the Avatar, 2 weeks ago in Atlanta against Brandon Cartlidge on Sultai Reanimator, a deck that I think gained a lot just off of, well, there's other cards from Lord and Eclipse here, but Formidable Speaker, massively impactful for this Reanimator deck.
Yeah, and honestly, that's one that both players look like they are making use of. Yes, correct, perfect. I thought I misread for a second. But the ability for any sort of creature synergy deck to use that card cannot be overstated.
Yeah, just 2 copies in Tipple's deck versus 4 in Cartlidge's, as Tipple here is on the play. Just a tapped Breeding Pool on turn 1. Botanical Sanctum is going to enable turn 2 Bramble Familiar.
And this is a really cool interaction in the Bant Airbending deck in particular, where you can airbend your own Bramble Familiar and then use Fetch Quest for the airbending cost of 2 mana.
That is so strong.
Yeah, it is not weak. You see, in R&D, we thought Fetch Quest was a 7 mana spell.
Well, here's a good, honest 2-mana spell. Oblivious Bookworm on turn 2 for Cartlidge. You see a Verge and a Shockvan already giving access to the full Sultai mana, and the Bookworm already giving access to a Bringer of the Last Gift in the graveyard.
And this is sort of what the deck is built around in a lot of ways. This feels reminiscent of Modern Living End. This time, I started to say 10 years ago and realized that wasn't far enough back, Ryan.
Well, you know, who's keeping track?
Our players in the feature match area, as Tipple plays one of the new innovations in this banned airbending shell. That is the Oko from Lorwyn Eclipse.
Talk to me about this Oko. All right, maybe I'm kind of a dunce, but this card looked kind of weak to me on paper.
So the front side of Oko is not really the super exciting part. I would say Oko Shadowmoor Scion is really the part of this that is the business end of the Planeswalker. The front is just what gets you in the door. This is something that is okay at protecting itself early on, and the creature type stuff that it offers is really fun on the synergy side. But the back side of it, what I've heard from players this weekend, just milling around the room, yesterday, kind of getting their takes on how they feel about the tournament, is it solves a lot of the grindy issues that you had against the Is It Lessons deck, just providing a continuous flow of material and selection.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And something that's not fighting on a creature axis, give you a little bit of diversity in your threats there. And
Right. Notably, most of the cards in the spells in the Lessons deck struggle to go after Planeswalkers, and with just Grand able to pressure them. This card is really close to just drawing a ton of cards by when it transforms, just -1 over and over and over to effectively look at the top 3 cards, get the best one every single turn, and emulate some of that selection that Lessons has access to.
And for Cartlidge, you see a card that I don't think anybody thinks is weak from Lorwyn Eclipse. Formidable Speaker, discarding Marin, River Regent, going to find that superior Spider-Man. Pretty stocked graveyard already for it.
Right, and this is the position that this deck is so excited about playing the Speaker for, where this is both, it enables in 2 different directions. It is a graveyard enabler, and it is a tutor at the same time, which is just so nice. In this spot, now all of a sudden, Marin River Regent is threatening to undo Tipple's entire battlefield that isn't already getting undone by the Bringer.
And you see Tipple does spend the green mana to transform Oko into Oko Shadowmoor Scion. Going to use an ability there, -1 to mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from a moment in your hand, so picks up one of those copies of Interdimensional Web Watch. Both copies were milled there.
I think that was Airbender Ascension.
Oh, you're so right. Excuse me.
It's all right. We're going to get through this together.
I got Mirrored in Brain. The artifact, the white cards, or I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I feel you. That's when I started playing.
Nice.
And I love Tipple proactively using Airbending Ascension to go after Bramble Familiar here, because that's something that actually mitigates the impact of Cartlidge's version of the combo, which is really good at both sweeping up non-creature permanents and creatures, which sounds great. But if this airbending deck can kill from hand, or in this case exile, without ever giving a chance for Cartlidge to interact at sorcery speed, that's not something that this Reanimator deck is great at handling.
Yeah, so again, what you're saying is this fetch quest in the Airbent Exile is more useful to Tipple than a creature that would get swept up by a Bringer of the Last Gift effect.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so the creatures are going to take care of that Oko. That value engine shut off, and here is Superior Spider-Man. Cartlidge with the options of Bringer of the Last Gift, Marin River Regent, or Town Greeter, I guess. It's going to be Bringer. Why not all 3? Llanowar Elves comes back for Tipple. That one was milled off of the Oko. All right, so Town Greeter is going to mill 4 cards here, and the Marin River Regent has the option to bounce some things.
All right, and you can see the thinking going on. Maybe there's a world where Marin River Regent just maybe wants to bounce one of Cartlidge's own permanents instead, or just not go after the Airbending Ascension.
Yeah, just bounces the Llanowar Elves. Kind of makes sense not to bounce the Ascension, right? Having something airbent away reduces his clock.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, the calculus for Cartlidge is, do you want Tipple to have a combo piece on the table or not? Airbending Ascension is one of the cards that can let Tipple just go infinite with Appa, for example. You still need Doc Orlock, but it's really hard to tell what card that Bramble Familiar represents off to the side.
So Town Greeter, milled 4, picked up a land. We head back to Tipple. Here's Doc Orlock, and we have that fetch quest already airbent that now costs 0 mana thanks to the Doc.
Well, guess what? If this Bramble Familiar from here were to hit, say, an Appa, I believe we may have Cartlidge staring down the barrel of 10,000 gajillion ally tokens.
Yeah, the Airbender Ascension already on the table. You just need 2 things to airbend to go back and forth, but the Appa is the one that gives you an ally every time for the trouble. Here we're looking at 7 cards for the fetch quest. Now, those look like Appas to me.
Listen, that having a pair is pretty nice.
What about 3 of a kind?
Not bad either. I got by the different treatments.
You love a spread.
That's true. That's just canon.
This is my diverse Appa portfolio. All right, here comes 1 Appa that's going to airbend away the Airbender's lesson. Here's land number 4 for Tipple. Here comes Bramble Familiar, discounted by 1 by Doc Orlock. It's going to make an ally token off of Appa. Currently, that airbending lesson is free. Here it comes back down.
All right, now that's going to get to airbend something.
Going to be Bramble Familiar. We're going to see some more allies here. We can see another free fetch quest, looking at the top 7.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this is perhaps precarious. We know that 2 of the Appas are on the bottom of the library.
At this point, we're looking for another Airbender Ascension or an Aang to keep going.
Well, how about Aang at the crossroads? It keeps going.
That does keep going.
Airbender Ascension going up here. Aang's going to look at top 5. Looking for a creature to add to the spread here. Okay, there's Aang Swift Savior. Now we have another Airbender.
And notably, so something I actually think that Tipple may be doing here is it's easy to say, okay, hey, why did we not just see Tipple go for the combo and make 10,000 allies and pass the turn? This looks like it could have been basically her saying, I actually think I'm far enough ahead here and not literally dead on the table that I can also just try to go for killing you this turn by finding, say, a Badger Mole Cub, because she is able to look through her deck now that she has this Aang at the crossroads and can airbend any number of permanents with the Appa. I believe this is what she's explaining as well. So she's going to find a Badger Mole Cub and then make it infinitely large by also airbending it over and over and over.
Right.
Which gives you infinite haste damage because earthbending gives the land that it animates haste.
Yeah, the fetch quest being infinitely iteratable there. It's going to find a Badger Bowl, make an infinite, like you said. And for a smaller-brained, pass-the-turn-oriented player like me, once you find the Aang Swift Savior, you can leave with that airbent and have a 0-mana form of interaction if you do have to pass the turn as well. So a lot of incentives to go for it. Killing this turn and preventing the possibility of an interaction future turn.
Right, so that's the spot where, I mean, you can't hog all the credit. My gut reaction was to go, why don't you just make 10,000 allies and pass the turn? The answer is that Cartlidge's deck can actually still win through that, which is alarming.
Yeah, you know, that is a little scary.
Yeah, right.
Having access to sweepers that destroy all your stuff and also threaten lethal pretty quickly. But we are going to game number 2 here. Nicole Tipple now up a game. Let's just start at the top of the screen. That's just more natural, I think. What does Tipple have to try to even turn up the pressure here from there?
We're seeing some ways to attack the graveyard, which I would expect to come in here. So Cutzel's Flanker as well as Rest in Peace are both great cards. Soul Guide Lantern, something that we've already seen have really just get put through its paces. Spider Sense is a card that I think a lot of people think about as a way to go after non-creature spells. In this case, that's a card I'm pretty interested in seeing go after the triggered abilities of the creatures in Cartlidge's deck. So I think those are the main things that Tipple is going to be interested in here. There are some other things that you could talk me into, depending on what Tipple thinks the post-board games look like, in the vein of Avid Interrupter, for example. But for the most part, I think she just wants to be able to execute on her combo.
That makes sense. I'm kind of interested in Avatar's Wrathing away, bringing to the last gift board, but maybe that's just me wanting to do something exciting.
Yeah, I think it sounds really cool, and unless Tipple can win the next turn, then you realize your opponent can actually just quote-unquote
play the cards
cast
for 2 mana.
Yeah, and you get to stagger them one at a time as well. So it is perfectly fine, but I suspect that's not where this is going to be at its best, and if she is bringing it in, it's probably 1.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense as we take a look at Cartlidge's side of things. Now down a game on Sultai Reanimator. Top card there, Duress. I don't really know how much that plays against Airbending. What does he have here to try to shore up this matchup?
I think there is not a ton going on here, which is somewhat concerning. Spider Sense is naturally going to be pretty nice here. I suspect that Cartlidge is going to want to try and find ways to actually just break up Tipple's combo for the most part. It looks like this is mostly a bunch of sorcery speed interaction, which is a bit concerning to me.
Yeah, intimidation tactics can be useful at sorcery speed. Get some of the airbenders out of hand.
Right, that's something that you can be reaching for. I also suspect Spell Snare is going to be coming in here. It's really nice against Doc Orlock as well as Badger Mole Cub. It also can attack at least the front face of Bramble Familiar. So this is the sort of matchup where there are enough targets to justify bringing in Spell Snare. I don't hate that one.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. So this is the first standard regional championship for this season. We're playing here in Portland this weekend, but next month in February, SCGCON is coming to Milwaukee. It's going to be the same format, but I think that this format's definitely going to have some time to shape up. We'll see exactly what the standard players really are. Certainly we have the Pro Tour next week between now and then. A lot of exciting stuff happening there. The main event is going to be the regional championship there in Milwaukee. Tons of cool side events to check out as well. I know that you're one to play some legacy side events.
Literally did it yesterday, brother. Literally yesterday. And you kind of touched on it, but I really want to highlight how cool it is, even if you aren't able to make it out to this, to tune in to coverage of that event. Watching the metagame develop from the first RC to the second one has been so sick over the last few seasons of the regional championships. I know for any viewers at home who've been longtime watchers, we were able to see just last year we saw the entire modern metagame shift between the first regional championship in Portland and the next one in Charlotte. You and I also had the privilege of covering a couple of the standard RCs over the summer where things changed up quite a bit. So you are not going to want to miss out on this one on February 20th through 22nd.
I find the details about that and all the other SCGCON events coming up this year at StarCityGames.com/SCGCON. So many cool events, and next month, in Milwaukee. Another RC coming up. All right, so it sounds like we're not going to have the graphic for the rest of this match here. This is a backup. This is pre-recorded, but we're underway. We have Cartlidge starting things off with a Watery Grave and a Cavern of Souls. No action on turn one for Tipple, just a tapped Temple Garden. Cavern of Souls coming down an Elemental. Seems like we're going to see a lot of that this weekend.
Yeah, that one's pretty nice at casting cards that ask for two of the same color, like Deceit.
Deceit can take a look at Tipple's hand. You see 3 lands off to the side, a pair of Formidable Speakers, an Oko, and formerly a Doc Orlock.
And this is textbook. You have a hand disruption spell, you try and poke a hole in the opponent's curve.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's the 2-drop. Also importantly, a part of the combo.
Definitely. Notably, Tipple also left Oko in, which speaks to her expecting things to get a lot grindier post board. It is basically every card in her hand is great at rebuilding from a hand disruption spell.
You're talking about poking a hole in the curve. Well, here's a Badger Mole Cub off the top for Tipple. Is going to wake up that Plains.
Every mountain starts as a molehill.
And this Plains is starting as a 0/0. It's now a 1/1.
So true.
Here's Wistfulness. Looks like a draw 2, discard 1 type beat.
And that's one of the nice things about this card in particular is it is so low opportunity cost to include in your deck while also doing a bunch of other stuff. Puts creature in graveyard, gives you main deck artifact and enchantment removal, and so on.
Cartlidge once again online with the Bringer of the Last Gift in the graveyard early as he plays a tapped Overgrown Tomb for land number 3. Now Tipple untapping with that Badger Mole Cub. We know that both of the Formidable Speakers are in hand, so that's the floor for this turn, is cast one of those. Here's where we'll start.
All right.
Formidable Speaker discards that Oko.
And notably, her discarding the Oko is a loud signal that she's identified based on the graveyard on the other side of the table that Cartlidge is already threatening lethal, and this is not a game where you are trying to grind. You just gotta go.
Yeah, she goes and finds Kutzel's Flanker. Badger Mole Cub is going to rumble in. Cartlidge to 18, I believe. And tapped Hallowed Fountain is the land for turn. Now Cartlidge will untap with 3 lands with the Bringer of the Last Gift in the graveyard. We could see some fireworks here as a shock for their breeding pool.
All right, that flanker is Tipple saying now or never on Superior Spider-Man.
And the answer is now. Superior Spider-Man, exiling Bringer of the Last Gift. That's going to bring back Wistfulness and Deceit. No effects as no mana was paid for them. And Little interesting. Doc Orlock is returned for Tipple.
This is a spot, unlike last game, not much to do with the Orlock, and whew, Cartlidge has 20 power in play already. More than 20 by my math, but you know, honestly, if your opponent is at 20 or less, it's kind of the same number.
This is a non-trivial amount of power. Yeah, we're going to pick things up here. Brandon Cartlidge even things out against Nicole Tipple. And
that is disruption with a clock.
And this is really kind of what left off of the page. I mean, I guess the formidable speaker was on the side of Tipple there, but something that really has... We've seen the Superior Spider-Man Sultai Reanimator deck before. This is a deck that Ken Yukihiro top 8 of the World Championship with last year, but we saw the Wistfulness being a notable discard outlet there for the early turns. It's been added to the deck. Formidable Speaker, a discard outlet that also tutors. So a lot of consistency and power added to this deck by Lauren Eclipsed.
Yeah, ton of flexibility. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel like this deck is having to make any massive sacrifices to play this sort of game. Previously, there were a bunch of cards that were harder to actually include in your deck, but looking at Cartlidge's deck, I really appreciate how lean that they've been able to make the combo. I'm seeing 2 copies of Arden the Usurper and then 3 copies of Bringer the Last Gift, and otherwise, it looks like he's just kind of a normal Sultai Reanimator, or excuse me, a Sultai mid-range deck that happens to have this combo finish to threaten.
All right, so we're talking about Lauren Eclipsed a lot. That's the new set being released this weekend, but we have another set coming down the pipeline. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I am so excited. I grew up on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Everybody I knew growing up had a favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I kind of waffled between Michelangelo and Raphael. Today I'm feeling like a Raphael.
Yeah, I would label you as cool but rude. But like Minnesota rude.
In like a good way.
Like a good way.
In a good way.
Like a good way.
Like a good way.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be one of these Magic Spotlight events coming up. It is Magic Spotlight Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles celebrating the release of the TMNT set. That's going to be in Richmond, Virginia, March 6th to 8th. Check that one out at StarCityGames.com/SCGCON. There's going to be live coverage of that. It's going to be a lot of turtles slinging around, I imagine.
And, you know, Richmond, great food.
Oh, yeah.
Actually great food there.
Players underway here. Big development on turn 1. Tipple's going to have a turn 1 Soul Guide Lantern, but it is on a mulligan. As we see Intimidation Tactics, going to look at the rest of the hand, taking away Formidable Speaker. So Tipple just left with a couple lands and a Badger Mole Cub.
See, and this is the other side of hand disruption that you can see from a card like Intimidation Tactics. Rather than going after Tipple's curve, now Cartlidge is saying, well, if you just have Soul Guide Lantern and Badger Mole Cub as the leftover holdings, you're not really doing anything. Formidable Speaker is the outlet for Tipple to convert the cards that she has access to into impact.
Right. Now here's Badger Mole Cub. A lot of mana waking up this Botanical Sanctum, but nothing doing in the hand as we left it, as we see what Brandon Cartlidge can deploy on turn number 2. Very fancy Basic Swamp was the first land. It's going to be casting a Requiting Hex here. Another pretty breakout card from Lauren Eclipse. I think we're going to see a lot of that one this weekend.
That is one of the best cards in Cartlidge's deck against Tipple. Just being able to do anything at instant speed is so huge. It's able to check Doc Orlock. We just saw what it did to Badger Mole Cub, and Tipple just has another Lana War Elf as the follow-up.
Botanical Sanctum attacks, Cartlidge down to 19, and Lana War Elves joins the party for Tipple, as Cartlidge is going to shock in a Watery Grave down to 17. Perhaps a Formidable Speaker here. We'll see what the play is. There it is, JED, the world champion himself, discarding Bringer the Last Gift. Actually shuffles past a couple Superior Spider-Mans on the way there. There is the face-up Soul Guide Lantern on the table.
Yeah, this is the interesting spot where Cartlidge doesn't actually have a ton of stuff in graveyard, so the Bringer is probably not what they're going to be looking for. I suspect it might even just be an Elemental to play a fair game.
And the Wistfulness, that one only costs 5 to pay full retail.
Yeah, and with the Soul Guide Lantern face up on Tipple's side of the table, until Cartlidge puts Tipple under some pressure, she doesn't really have a reason to cash it in for a card like we saw earlier in some other matches.
Deceit going to be the pickup here for Cartlidge. I think there was some consideration there. Did he want to do Wistfulness? Did he want to do Deceit? Lands on the one that can answer something maybe other than the Soul Guide Lantern. As we see what Tipple can add to the battlefield. There's land number 4. Access to 5 mana thanks to Llanowar Elves.
Aang at the crossroads would be fantastic here. She didn't slam it though, so I don't think that's there.
Not looking a lot like she has it. In fact, just passes the turn. Here's land number 4 for Cartlidge. A tap of 3. Are we sculpting the hand further? We are. Formidable Speaker number 2. Discards Intimidation Tactics. Oh, great. That's some. Oh, he's thinking about it, but I was going to say that's some real power of this card. And
yes.
The new utility for this archetype is you have cards like Duress on the sideboard. You see the Intimidation Tactics. Those are strong on turn 1 and not strong on turn 4. So being able to loot those away is strong. Looks like actually, here's why we're stopping. Aang at the Crossroads is going to airbend that Formidable Speaker. That's not going to enter just yet. So some play for Tipple on this turn. Has an airbender online.
In a lot of ways, she just needs to find opportunities to develop these cards onto the battlefield at some point. So getting in for any amount of value makes a good deal of sense to me.
We head back to Tipple. I believe that Aang was the only card in hand, as it will attack for 2, Cartlidge to 15. And once again, passing the turn. Could be nothing. Could be an Appa.
My worm-infested brain, every time a green player passes with 4 or more mana up, cannot help but just go, oh, green deck with 4 mana and nothing to do. That is so unlucky.
If only there were company to collect. Cartlidge is now going to cast that speaker off of the airbending. Just 2 mana this time. Tipple is going to ask to read Deceit in response here before considering a response.
And this is a spot where Tipple may just have another Aang Swift Savior, and there's some consideration on if she wants to go after the Formidable Speaker to try and just get the rest of Cartledge's mana this turn.
It looks like Tipple has a question to ask away from the table.
I have some suspicion it may be checking to see how the text boxes of the evoked creatures and paying for airbending interact.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of a weird one.
I think it's good for the Elementals player.
I think you're right. You pay them for 2, and as long as that mana is 2 mana of the one or the other color, you'll get the appropriate effect. Similar to how when you Superior Spider-Man and copy one of those Elementals, if you pay to double blue, you'll get a double blue effect for it.
Yes.
Which is wild.
Not weak.
Not weak.
Not weak. I've done my fair share of Evoke Deceit into UUBB Superior Spider-Man.
I'm definitely thinking about wanting to cube with this stuff. Formidable Speaker, this is actually a big part of Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's motivation for designing this card. He wanted a sweet cube one, and I think he got there.
That was the first thing he said was, I want to be an elf and I want to be for cube.
Done and done. All right, so Tipple is going to Spider Sense about this.
Oh, picking up Aang. That's so interesting.
Web slinging Aang back. Countering, the triggered ability off of the speaker.
And in some ways, this is what's so cool about the web slinging ability, is it feels like a cost a lot of the time to have to pick up a tapped creature. Picking up a card with an enters trigger, however, that you can cast this turn is pretty nice.
Aang kind of looks like he's shooting a web there. The arm extended. I buy it.
I don't. That's not canon. That is not canon.
It's called a head canon. It's
Right.
called fan fiction, and I would appreciate if you would respect my art.
Listen, I respect your right to make it.
You think maybe it's a flavor judge ruling, and if you can web sling Aang, kind of like the appeal you're making against my joke?
I didn't know that. I thought this was high art.
Jokes can be high art. All right, a little bit more with the judge call happening here. Looks like both sides of the table have some information to ask for away from the table.
Uh-oh. Perhaps now Cartlidge wants to see how elementals work with airbending.
Could also be a question off of when is Aang in hand off of web slinging?
Sure.
Is it a cost? Is the Aang ready to airbend something right away? Or could you respond with the Spider Sense on the stack and avoid that? All right, but things have resolved. Aang has been web slung back to hand, and the Formidable Speaker's trigger has been countered.
A lot of fighting over Formidable Speaker this game.
I think we're going to see a lot of it this weekend. All right, we know about a Deceit in Cartridge's hand. Thinking a bit about tapping this too, what to do with it.
Two of them.
Yeah, one of the Formidable Speakers can attack, and it will. Tipple to 18. And here is that Intimidation Tactics that was unable to be discarded. And yeah, Aang is going to come down in response. That makes sense on Tipple's side.
Yeah, this is a spot where, for Cartlidge, the question whenever you're trying to make the game grindy is figuring out how to make your cards line up well against your opponent. And we saw that this Intimidation Tactics was just going to get discarded, right? Just a one turn cycle ago. So being able to say, okay, this is how I'm going to try and leverage a mana advantage, perhaps, and actually just force my hand and say, all right, I want your Aang to not be worth a card.
Tipple going to think about what to airbend here. Doesn't really make any sense to airbend the Intimidation Tactics. That's just full-on whiffing here. And it looks like Tipple lands on airbend nothing.
Yeah, I suspect there just isn't really much to get out of airbending anything on the table, but you do want to triple check.
Land off the top for Tipple. And just going to be land, go, as we head back to Cartlidge. Still know about that Deceit in hand. Tipple now empty-handed. All right, so how close are we to airbending Aang into Aang and La?
I believe we are in one, waterbend. Two,
yes, yes.
I believe we are one away. Oh no, you can tap artifacts for waterbending.
Soul Guide Lantern clocking in. Or not. It's like a Bitter Triumph. Going to take care of Aang there. Paying 3 life for the trouble, but Cartlidge has some to give, down to 12.
Oh yeah, this is the part where we go, well, if I must.
And here come the Formidable Speakers. I wasn't expecting to see Speaker beat down this early in the weekend, but they're clocking in.
Would you say that that was an attack for formidable?
You already said it, so I don't have to, but...
Listen, we're a team.
Tipple to 14 off of that formidable attack. Back over to Cartlidge. Has access to 5 mana. Seems to be waiting for land number 6 at least before deploying that Deceit. Just going to play Oblivious Bookworm here. Another 2-power creature.
Notably, a lot of blue and black sources available from here. No green ones.
Here you see. Once again, thinking about tapping 2. Beatdowns make sense. Formidable Speakers rumble across again. Tipple to 10. And yeah, just going to move to the Trigger My Bookworm phase of the turn. Draw and discard 1. No face down permanents have entered this turn.
Ooh. Unlucky, really.
And Deceit actually discarded away. All right, see what Tipple can do. Drawing off the top. It's getting tense with the life totals where we are. That Soul Guy and Lantern, it prevents the really disastrous stuff from happening. But at some point, you do just need to draw 1 card.
Right, this is the point where Tipple just needs to find a way to make something happen.
Doc Orlock.
That's a piece of the puzzle.
A piece of something.
Right, it's uncomfortable when Cartledge's worst card in hand a moment ago was just Deceit.
Yeah. I was going to say that third point of toughness, it matters in the texture of the card, but if Cartlidge can just answer it, well, that doesn't matter at all. And here is a tap of 6, land number 6, enabling another Deceit.
It turns out Deceit was the best and worst card in Cartlidge's hand.
A deceitful discard. As here is double blue, double black, bounce, and the discard Doc Orlock. You haven't seen this one, so you have the 2 different options there. Double blue means you get to bounce a non-land permanent. Double black means you get to look at a player's hand. You stack them in the right order, so the bounce resolves first. You get the card right out of their hand, and here's an attack for 6.
Yeah, and Tipple taking a long pause there and tanking despite not having cards in hand was to think about every card that could be drawn off Soul Guide Lantern to change the outcome of what happens.
There was a draw 1 card on the Soul Guide Lantern. Tipple to 4. Draws up to 2 cards in hand. Just going to show him Llanowar Elf, Bramble Familiar. I mean, you can fetch quest. Is there a fetch quest that can go off from here?
Right, all of a sudden she started to just play them out, and now she's thinking, okay, but what happens if I hit Appa? What happens if I hit Aang Swift Savior? What happens, can I combo if I hit Aang at the Crossroads or something to that effect?
Yeah, here is the fetch quest. Gonna look at the top 7. I'm not sure if you can do it without an Orlock already on the battlefield, but it makes sense to take a look and look at all those lands. Yeah, that's gonna do it. Brandon Cartlidge gonna advance to 1-0 here on Sultai Reanimator over Nicole Tipple on Bant Airbending. Tournament is still young, lots of play left to be doing here. I'm sure we have not seen the last of Nicole Tipple, but Brandon Cartlidge really making this Sultai Reanimator deck, a deck that I think was already pretty strong, a player in Standard, look even better this weekend.
Right, that was a spot where I think both decks looked like they were firing on all cylinders at different points in the game. Naturally, it looked like, if we're being honest, Sultai Reanimator was firing on a few more cylinders in the post-board games, but a lot of what that deck has gained from Lorwyn Eclipse, we touched on it a bit during the games, was that extra layer of consistency that it's getting, which I really, really think we're going to see it making deeper runs than it's been able to make historically as a result of that.
Yeah, and even just the Formidable Speaker beatdown plan. Like, I was thinking about the consistency of the deck, but the fact that you don't really even have to combo, just going to cast some 2-power creatures, cast some Deceits, looked really strong.
Yep.
Sure, we're going to see more of that. But that's all we're going to see from round number 1. But we'll be back before you know it for round number 2 here at the Regional Championship at Portland.